One is citizen concerns. Do we have anybody that would like to address the board for an item not already on the agenda tonight? Seeing none, I will move approval of tonight's agenda.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Monson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Items 3 through 7 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the March 16 meeting. 4 is approval of claims. 5 is building services. Approval of items to be auctioned per the personal property disposition policy. Item 6, human resources. A, approval of memorandum of personnel transactions. B, authorization to initiate hiring process. Item 7 is secondary roads. Approve the permit to work in the right-of-way for Pat Weaver. And B, approve the underground utility permit of CenturyLink.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Motion by Raddick, second by DeWitt. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Consent agenda passes unanimously. Item 8 is Hospice of Siouxland. Approval of and presentation of proclamation as March 2021 National Social Work Month. Please approach the... Takes a crew.
Yeah.
All right. So, do we have any, would you like to say anything about the proclamation or add anything or?
No, this is our group of social workers for Hospice of Siouxland and Siouxland Palliative Care. And March is Social Work Appreciation Month. So I wanted to do this in honor of them and acknowledge all that they do. And this year's theme is actually social workers are essential. So they're an amazing group of people, and I appreciate you allowing us to come and
I know that.
acknowledge them.
Yes, absolutely. I approximately a year ago had some experience with Hospice of Siouxland, and I couldn't do your job. There's no possible way.
You should introduce everybody and then
Yes.
say like the mission of the hospice there. And
Okay, who wanted to say the mission of the hospice?
To provide high-quality, compassionate care at the end of life.
So this one, Melissa Dowdy, you wanted me to share the names?
Sure.
She's been with Hospice of Siouxland as a social worker for 19 years.
Debbie Logan, I've been there just about 2 years. Denise Strickman, I've been there almost 15 years.
Kayla Kwan, 3 years.
Casey Nilsson, 3 months.
And Amy
And
Millard.
Amy Millard, 16 years.
I'm on 17. There you go. For hospice or
Yeah.
social work?
Starting 17. Sorry.
Is this your fashionably late entrance or?
It's the doctor's fault. No. Always.
Well, like I said, this is, I think the Hospice of Siouxland is one, and hospices everywhere do a fantastic job. Again, I couldn't do that, and certainly look up to those that do it. So I will move to approve the presentation and of proclamation of National Social Work Month.
I'll second it.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any other comments from the board? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Item 9 is Community and Economic Development. Item A is receive the final staff report and Zoning Commission's recommendation from the March 15 meeting.
Excuse me, good evening, David Gleiser, Community Economic Development Director. This is actually a follow-up item to an action the board took just recently, the rezone. Steve Holmes, co-trustee of the Gilbert C. Holmes Irrevocable Trust, has submitted a minor subdivision application, divided their family's parcel into 3 lots to establish the Rainbow Edition. Excuse me. The purpose of this proposal is to divide their property among 3 siblings and allow the applicant to construct a new single-family dwelling on Lot 3. This property is currently addressed as 7510 Correctionville Road. Its GIS parcel is currently 8946-3410-0004, and it's located in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 4 in the Concord Township. The property was recently rezoned, as I just mentioned, to the Agricultural Estate Zoning District. The property is not located in the floodplain. The proposed lots and all of the uses are compliant with our zoning ordinance. And as always, all required legal notifications were made. All relevant agency stakeholders and property owners were notified of this request and all of the related public hearings. Due to its proximity to the city of Sioux City being within their 2-mile corporate boundary, this was required to have extraterritorial review by the Sioux City Zoning Commission. The Zoning Commission recommended approval to the City Council, and the City Council approved it on March 8th. On March 15th, the Woodbury County Zoning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval of the final plat as proposed, and my office has not received any public comment for or against this requested action. It's a staff recommendation to receive the final report and approve the plat as proposed.
Well, I'll move to receive the report.
Motion by Radig, second by DeWitt to receive the final staff report. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B, approve the Rainbow Edition final plat and authorize the chairman to sign the resolution.
Move it. Second.
Motion by Monson, second by Radig. Any other comments, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Thanks, you, Mr. Gleiser. Didn't you give me a pen that doesn't work, David?
I apologize about that. I'll catch you tomorrow.
Does it have to be in black? Yeah, I'll be here tomorrow or the next day.
It's a Mylar, so we gotta use a special
Okay.
marker. We'll catch you in the
Give your
morning.
bad pen back. Thank you.
Now you're gonna make him come back just for that, huh?
Well, this is the responsible, I've held off and held the line on my budget to.
Get those office supplies. See, I expected that comment.
Wow. I've got a used one at home. I'll just bring it in for you. Item 10, secondary roads. A is receive bids for county pavement markings for 2021 and return them to the county engineer for review and recommendation.
Keep them coming. Good. Pat, yeah.
If everybody has a copy, I'll go ahead and proceed with opening. We have 3 bids today. First is from Dakota Traffic Services. included. Center line yellow, $23.50 per gallon, $42,300. Solid white edge line, $23.50 per gallon, $82,250. Stop bars, 72 each, $25 for $1,800 total. Special pavement markings on Old Lakeport and K45, $3,000. Special markings at Port Neal Road and 255th Street, $1,500, for a total of $130,850. 130850. Next is from Iowa Plains Signing of Slater, Iowa. Bid bond is included. Centerline yellow, $23.75 per gallon, for a total of $42,750. White edge line, $23.75 a gallon, $83,125. Stop bars, $80 each, $5,760 for 72 of them. Special marking at Old Lakeport and K45, $3,950. Special markings at Port Neal Road and 255th Street, $3,950. Total, $139,535. 139,535. Final bid is from Vogel Traffic Services, Orange City, Iowa.
$22.50.
Did you require a bid bond, Van? You did not. Okay. Usually for this we don't, but all the others had submitted one. Vogel did not, so I wanted to be sure. Centerline yellow, $18.95 a gallon, $34,110. Solid white edge line, $18.95 a gallon, $66,325. Stop bars, 72 at $45 each, $3,240. Special markings at Old Lakeport and K45, $2,850. Special markings at Port Neal Road and 255th Street, $2,850. Total bid, $109,375. 109,375.
Where's he buying his paint?
They from themselves.
Oh,
They paint.
Cutting out the middle
It's
guy.
nice to have Vogel back. They haven't bid in 4 years.
wow.
They had a paint truck fire, right? That's-
Yes. And it took them a while to get geared back up and running again, so. I guess first would be for the board to receive the bids.
I'll move to receive.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Monson to receive the bids. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
I'll move to award to local traffic services.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Monson to award the bid to the lowest bidder,
Vogel Traffic.
Vogel Traffic.
Vogel, okay.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Approve the resolution to set the date of April 20 at 4:40 for the vacating road right-of-way.
In response to requests, the county has been working on vacating some excess right-of-way. They're platted streets in Morningside Second Edition. This is the fourth time we've come to the board with getting rid of some of these platted streets that have never been developed as roads. This vacates everything that is not used. 3 of the residents there had requested this change. It involves in all 11 different vacations. We're proposing to hold a hearing on it Tuesday, April 20th at 4:40 p.m. This will allow us adequate time for publication and certified mail to be sent to each of the residents.
I'll move.
What is this building here?
That would be the new high school, I think.
What?
Christian.
Christian. This is that ground behind there.
Yes.
I remember all that.
And you know that 2 of the landowners out there have had a dispute over a fence and an alley. This basically allows them to request a quitclaim deed, and then it's jump ball, whichever gets to court and
Oh, really?
has a valid claim. All the platted streets, we don't vacate to the middle of a platted street. People only own to the lot line until such time as we vacate them. At that point in time, the land goes back to the person from whom the land was originally
Yeah.
taken. They're long dead now, and figuring out who that succeeding landowner would be is difficult, if not impossible. What the county has done is we give the adjacent landowners quitclaim deeds. They can then go to the court and make a claim to quiet title and thereby acquire the title.
Will they be notified of this?
Yes.
Okay.
They get certified mail. It's also published in all the papers of record for the county.
What do we need, a motion?
Yeah, I started to say I'll move to approve the resolution to set April 20 at 4:40 for the vacating right-of-way.
I'll second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0.
Next, we have a completion certificate for the completion of Project G 2021 stockpile haul from Hallett Materials for $443,350. The work has been completed in line with county requirements. I recommend approval of the certificate.
I'll move that.
Motion by Radig, second by Ung. Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Item E, approve the certificate of completion for the G 2021 stockpile right pit.
We also acquired some gravel from the Wright gravel pit. I recommend approval of the completion certificate. All the work has been completed in compliance with the county contract.
I'll move it.
Second.
Motion by Radig, second by Ung, I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. All right, number 11, County Auditor, approval of the FY 2021 parking plan.
Have we discussed this previously? What you had before you is a parking plan, and what it reflects is that there are 4 spots that used to be reserved for the Board of Supervisors over behind the Law Enforcement Center, and now those are now designated for the Sheriff's Office. And it also adds a sentence that says that the Board of Supervisors, the sheriff will supply the Board of Supervisors placards for their vehicles to be parked at meters close to the courthouse.
I will move approval.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Young.
Does this, this doesn't do anything to like where Dennis parks?
Nope.
Okay.
We tried to get him parked farther away, but it
Yeah, I
hasn't
know.
worked so far.
Sometimes you need the exercise. There wasn't anything about like prior to formal adoption, vehicles will be towed? Because, I mean,
There's,
I'm already following the policy, and I hope my car's still out front.
oh, all right. I thought you were talking about all complaints. I haven't include this for Kenny is that he gets to be the parking cop if somebody parks in somebody else's spot, so.
Does this seem to help with the parking back there, Sheriff?
It's still real fresh, but yeah, it's gonna, so there's 4 administrators that.
Yeah, you're probably better.
So, what it did was it allowed us to free up 4 of the metered spaces in the 700 block of Douglas Street for citizens who are visiting either the law enforcement center or the courthouse. It allowed us to free up those 4 metered spaces by moving 4 administrators, sheriff's office administrators' vehicles into those 4 spots. And then the benefit is that you all will get to park directly adjacent to the courthouse or the LEC. So I would say it's beneficial for everybody involved.
Cool.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
This is actually the most parked on street in all of downtown Sioux City. And I always thought that when I was on council that they should have narrowed the road and done diagonal parking, but it didn't go anywhere. Increase that parking revenue, you know,
Dime at a time.
time at a time. Big money.
All right, item 12, County Attorney P.J. Jennings and Budget Analyst Dennis Butler, discussion and action on delaying the sale of Prairie Hills County farmland until the fall of 2021.
Did we vote on that last one?
Oh, we talked about it last time.
No, I mean,
Oh,
Pat Gill.
Item
yes, we
Gills.
voted on that, didn't we, Pat, on the parking?
Actually,
We did not? Did you get a motion and a second?
yeah, I do.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Thank you. Okay, now we can officially move on to the farm.
Okay,
Looks like PJ sat down, you get to do all the talking, Dennis.
that's good, otherwise we go through it real quick here.
Dennis, I thought you were standing up here. P.J. Jennings, County Attorney's Office. You guys got the printout. Basically, at this point, for a couple of reasons, we just needed to slow down this train. This land and the prices is much too important. We got a lot of stuff to be done prior to we making this sale. The second part is we're now expecting some funding to come in, I believe, and so it makes the sale of this land less imperative for getting it done now than in the future. But the biggest thing is we just need to do it right. And there's just a lot of stuff to get done prior to the actual sale occurring. So it just makes sense to move it off to the fall.
Well, and at that point, wouldn't you just move it off to December when a lot of farmers have already got their stuff out of the ground and then have their, annual try to find a bunch of write-offs before the year's end?
Well, there's actually a time period, well, in the fall, so it could be anywhere from September to December, or no, September to
Well, I guess December 19th is still fall.
But if they do sell it, say, September, October, November, there'll be a clause in there where the farmer has the right to get the crops off the ground before the other party takes possession.
Right.
But there's a lot of things, you could go into, like, we gotta get surveyed, we have to get an abstract done on it, we gotta hire an auctioneer, set the fees, set a price, you want it low bid. There's just a lot of things to be done. Plus, you have to have public hearings to sell public land. So it'll take too long for the actual individual to buy it and get their crop in this year. So it's better, and this will be coming in the next section here, what we're gonna do with the land if we don't sell it now. So, supervisor
See,
vote-
Dennis, you could have just got up here and just said that.
Yeah, but you know, you talk so very often in front, and you do such a good job.
From what I hear, they're all looking at you doing on the job. You didn't need me. But no, he is totally correct. But again, we just need to do it right and make sure we got all our ducks in a row, so.
I'd move the county attorney's recommendation to move the sale of the property to the fall.
PJ, how long in your view should this take? If we do it right and we take the time that we should take, how long should this process take if we do it the right way?
I would say start to finish, you're looking at probably a month, month and a half.
So,
But that's with all the preparation in place and ready to go, which hopefully we'll be at by that point in time.
Motion by Monson, second by DeWitt, by the way.
so technically, I mean, we don't necessarily need to have a motion to do this. We could just plan on having the timeline be this. But I guess my concern is more, who is going to be the person that makes sure we do all the things that need to be done? Who's going to be our point person on this, or are we going to hire somebody to do this?
Well, we have to hire someone to do the survey, and we're kind of at that company's mercy because apparently they're all quite busy, so.
Sure.
Again, I don't think there's any good reason to rush through this thing. There could have been the opportunity to have it surveyed, but it probably would have cost substantially more just because of the time crunch, so. And again, as getting said, we seem to be avoiding some of the monetary emergencies where we were before, so I think for all involved, county, agriculture, the whole thing, I think we're just better off holding off on it, so.
Right. And as far as who's going to lead this carriage, to me, those are administrative type duties that don't have to be done by motion or action. The biggest thing, and it really, this particular motion that we're doing now isn't required by law. It's just an understanding so that everybody knows, including the public that's listening or will be listening, that this is when we're expecting to make this thing happen. So it just makes the books look a little bit better by doing it by motion right now.
I think, I guess I would recommend that we take a good look at the firm that estimated the value of the land, since they've already looked at it and done stuff in terms of determining its cost or its sale price. That's what they do for a living, and it just seems like an easy thing to have them manage getting this done. We got a letter from Gary Walters, who is on the Water and Soil Commission, and he outlined a whole page of things that have to be done to get it done. We don't know that, so I think we need to hire somebody that knows.
Yeah, I've never auctioned off a county farm before, so.
Or anything.
Is there only that name in town for the survey, or do we have options?
Well, there's 2 or 3 surveyors for sure, but as far as the land sale, I'm acquainted with at least 2 that can, besides this person that did the appraisal.
Has anyone got back to the appraisal company we used and seen what their timeline is?
Because we want some direction kind of from the board to go ahead. If that's all right with you gentlemen, we'll approach them. And I think even with a surveyor, we don't have to, it's professional services, but I think it's wise to bid this out a little bit and show them what we need surveyed, get some pricing back so we can pick from there.
Well, for now, I'll probably be in touch with Dennis and the county attorney's office, and we'll probably get this thing moving, at least get some direction out of it so we can move forward. Is that okay?
Yes.
And the
Right.
auctioneer also would have a good idea what time of the fall we should sell this property. The timing may be of some importance.
Yep.
Okay. We have a motion and second, don't we?
I also have one other question.
Sure.
Did we already approve a lease agreement for this year for this property?
That's coming in another section here.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. As I was gonna say, we just did the Breezy Farm, right? Not this one.
Not this one.
Okay.
We done with questions? All All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Board Administration, item A, approve the contribution of up to $2 million to the authority for site preparations to make the project shovel-ready. The project, of course, is the new LEC facility out there on 28th Street.
Okay, the reason we're proposing this is because we cannot use bond funds until we actually bid out the total project. At that point, we go out for bid for this, or go out for sale, the second set of bonds. So we've checked with Jason, our attorney down for the authority, and we've talked to Joshua about this, and we're proposing to use $2 million out, up to $2 million worth of our general basic reserves, which I'll be in the next motion, to help get the site going, get the site preps going, so we can actually place the building down so it's shovel ready. I think, and they could answer back here, you're probably Shane, that this would include the grading going in, the site itself, the building sits on, and I don't know, were we including utilities in this too, up to the building? So, like I say, this is up to the $2 million. If we don't need it, we'll donate the money as the bills come in, so if it's only 1.6 or it's 1.9, that's exactly what we'll send over to the authority. So we don't have to send maybe the whole $2 million over. And then we'll get into the repayment when we go to the sale, or second item here.
Okay,
We get a jump started, and we do have a pretty good chunk of coronavirus funds coming in. We can talk about that as informational later here if you'd like. But this just gets it started. We can do this legally because we aren't using bond funds, we're using county funds. And
Shane, Kenny, Larry, does this put you in a good position?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Much better position.
And this money is included in the total bid, so we're actually separating this out, paying the county funds, so it actually makes the high end of 42 or 43 million less whatever this amount would be.
Without this funding, we can't move forward, and we're in a stuck position for an undetermined amount of time, which could potentially delay the project up to a whole year.
Any other questions? Everything he just said. The original dirt work estimate was 1.7 million. I think that was what Dennis was looking at. We're trying to do this because diesel fuel prices are still continuing to rise. Let's get that in because that's the biggest piece. You know, that equipment sits there, but it takes fuel. So let's get this done and get it moving.
And it has time to settle.
Yes, it needs 30 days. So once we get this thing, we have to overfill it, and it has to sit for 30 days with monitoring plates on before we can even start.
And by doing this, when can we start? When can we start?
So what the goal is if you guys do this, there's an authority meeting to actually approve to take this out for bid. We would then release the bid documents on March 30th with bids coming back in. This is pending the authority's approval. Bids coming back in on April 20th. So then right after that, again, with the authorities approving the number, we could get started on the dirt work. So we wouldn't be losing much time. It'd be as the spring thaws come out, we would actually be getting the dirt going and get it started on the job site. Other questions? Thank you.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second?
Motion by Radig, second by Monson. Further comments?
Where again's the 2 million coming out of for there, Dennis?
General basic fund reserves.
Okay.
We estimate our reserves to be between 5.4 and 5.6 million. After it's audited, it could be a little less, could be a little more.
And then that gets reimbursed again
That
by
will be
our,
reimbursed in item C, or
Okay.
B, I mean, item B.
Anyone
oh,
else?
I thought we were gonna reimburse from the,
We got two options.
I thought we were gonna use the,
COVID,
no,
sale of the farm.
the 50 million that we borrow. I thought that was gonna reimburse back to the.
No, that's going to the project. This is a contribution, so it actually adds to our 50.3 million. It'll actually add up to 2 million, but these are non-tax dollars. They're out of our reserves.
Anyone else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B, approve to replenish the general basic fund reserves from the sale of the county farm or the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. Notice that there's an "or" in there.
Yeah, this is here, as we're still trying to get the final guidelines for the Corona-19. This last 1.9 trillion they passed. All indications are saying that because of the way this is set up, with the cost going up over materials, because of labor and shortage of supply with the materials, that we can use this COVID-19, this American plan. But for the safety valve, we want to put the "or" in there in case we can't, which I feel we can. And we make that determination when we sell the farm in the fall. We can use the farm revenue, replenish our reserves, or we can use the COVID money, take that money, replenish our reserves. Then you had to sell the farm to possibly do whatever you want. You could reduce tax askings the following year. That was the original intent, potentially, of using the farm, was to reduce taxes for 2 years. Okay, with the way it's being set up, that we won't get the second bond issue borrowed till after July 1st. So at our public hearing, we're going to reduce our debt service levy by 31 cents. So we've reduced this down from 61 down to about 30 cents, 31 cents for next year. The following year, the whole brunt of, for 1 year, the brunt of the two sales, bond sales, will hit us in fiscal year 23. Okay, then we have an option there. Do we want to use the sale of the farm to maybe possibly reduce taxes, or replenish our reserve, or use some of the COVID money to replenish our reserves and save the farm money for potential use in future budgets? And after the third year, we'll have a half of the bond issue the first year, all of it the second year. The third year, hopefully the thing is built. In 23, 24, we'll have revenue to offset the tax asking, like we've told everybody pretty much. That's what we're going to do, and that's what the board and the authority agreed to do with the federal prisoner care, is dedicate this to tax reduction. So I want to leave it open for the board where you can use a sale or COVID money down the road, see how the sale goes. Now, if the sales, say we get $2 million for the sale of the farm, and we only spend $1.7 million, we already reimburse $1.7 million, then you'd have $300,000 to do something else with it. So it's kind of up in the air until we sell the farm, and we get guidelines. I've talked to NACO, some other people have talked to the congresspeople, and they all said the indication is this money can be used for the jail, which is fabulous. Saves a major problem for everybody.
Are we able to use the American Reserve Plan Act funds for fiscal year &22?
Yes.
You can go all the way up to December 31st, 2024.
Right. We get this in 2 installments. We get the first just a shade less than 10 million within 60 days following the enactment and president's. So I think by the end of April or first part of May, we set up a separate account, put this money in, because we've got to account for every dollar, because we could get audited. And if we don't spend it properly, we have to pay it back. So we want to make sure all our T's are crossed and our I's are dotted to make sure we can do this, which everybody I've talked to feels this is about the most legitimate one we could do.
So you said previously we could, if we did sell the farm by June-ish, we could use that for FY22.
Yes.
We can use this COVID money, as you call it, for this upcoming tax year?
Yes, for 23. Now, you can't reduce taxes directly or indirectly with this money.
For 22, I mean.
Yeah, we could. We could reimburse the general basic fund before 22, end of 22 if we get the money the board desires. Because that money is going to be solely up to the board where this money goes. Like I say, the first one would be about 2,000 short of 10 million.
Well, I think our plan has to be replenish the reserves with the sale of the farm, because then you're not using that for a reduction in tax askings.
Sale of the farm, you could use for reduction of tax asking if we
could.
reimburse the short, this 2 million from COVID funds. That frees up, because you can't use COVID funds to reduce taxes directly or indirectly. But the sale of the farm, you can do anything with that. You could reduce tax asking the following year. But I'm recommending not this coming year, because you're already gonna cut it in half now.
So expound upon that rule. You can't use the COVID money indirectly or directly to reduce taxes.
Correct.
You have to use it for
COVID-related.
expenses, just,
You know, could be another project by another department where they got a delay because the expenses went up so high, they can't afford it now because of COVID. Same way with the estimate on materials, the project's half labor, half materials. The labor, you know, is fairly stable. It's the materials that jump anywhere from 30 to 100%. So that's a direct relation to COVID. And I don't know if any of these gentlemen back here would like to address this a little bit, but it's pretty clear cut.
is it possible to use this money to reduce the tax rate for FY '22?
No, not for COVID. No. And then a year from this, whenever we receive the first allocation, we get another short of 10 million, which, that's a lot of money. But then if we don't need the whole 10 million, if we say the board does dedicate 10 million of this COVID money to the construction of jail, if the construction only comes where we only need 6 million of that, that's all we're gonna move over. The other 4 million stays with the county to do for other things before we reach the next 10 million.
Do we have to have that first 10 million spent before we take possession of, okay.
No, that's December 31st of 2024.
Yep.
Gives us 3 years to spend it.
Well, I will move item B. Approve to replenish the general basic fund reserves from the sale of the county farm or the American Rescue Plan Act.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Monson. Any other questions for Dennis? Questions for other board members? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item C, approve to cash rent the county farm for 2021 and receive bids by 4 p.m. on April 1st and setting the date to approve the lease by April 6th. This is what we talked about, what Mr. Radig was asking about a little bit ago.
So anybody who would like to farm that ground will send in a bid?
Yes.
Okay.
To the board office by 4 o'clock on April 1st.
And this will be published somehow?
Yes, we're gonna publish, we have a publication, I think, in place to go out and publish it. You know, most of them know what they're doing already, because we were gonna do it, so this is the formality to publish it. That way the public knows about it, anybody has an opportunity to bid by April 1st, 4 o'clock, that's on a Thursday. We'll get them, it's pretty simple, it's whatever the acre times the amount of acres available, and we'll have that in the publication.
So are you going to bring those bids to the board and open them, or?
I think,
That's what we usually do.
We have
bring
been,
them to the board open, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yep. We'll have them at the board to receive the bids and award the bid the same day.
I will move to approve the cash rent of the county farm. Motion by DeWitt, second by Wright. Any other questions or concerns? It's about the only thing we can do, because we're gonna put off the sale, we better get it planted. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item 14, thanks for all your work on that, Dennis.
Thank you.
Item four-
Thank the gentleman behind me too, helping through everything.
Item 14, Board of Supervisors, approval to publish notice of the intention of the board to appoint the county treasurer. Mr. Radig.
So this is essentially the first step in the process of appointing a county treasurer, is publishing a notice of the intention that we plan to do this. It has to be done at least 14 days before you would fill that position. And I did not write the public notice. I figured there's people that can probably do that better than me. If I don't know if we can stick Joshua on that, or if Pat would maybe know, or but what do you got there, Pat?
I just wanted to reiterate the concern I have about the transparency of this process, okay? This is something that occurred prior to March 8th. The law was different. This isn't something you folks did. This is what the legislature did. But prior to March 8th, what the law was is the board could call for a special election or publish notice to appoint and could publish before the vacancy occurred. So you received, as soon as you received that letter, you could have published at that point. The letter that came from the treasurer who said he was going to retire on April 1st or 2nd. At that time, citizens, they could have started to gather signatures at that point to petition for a special election. And for that type of election, to petition for it, you'd have to gather 10% of the people who participated in the last general election. So that would be 4,570 signatures. And that, as soon as you, and they could have started gathering them, and as soon as they, your publication, when it was published, then they had 14 days to file with the auditor's office during that period of time to go for a special election. So if no petition was filed before the appointment was made, another 14-day period would start upon appointment. They could file again during that period of time. So all this time, they could have been gathered signatures during that period of time. 4,570 signatures is a lot to gather. And so to be restricted to 14 days, I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but if no special election was held, the appointee would serve until the next pending election, which could have been a countywide special election. That was all prior to March 8th. So now what occurs is the board can call for a special election or publish a notice to intent to appoint. And this is what my concern has been, is the board has not discussed this publicly, has not deliberated publicly, whether or not you should call for a special election. You went, it was published on the agenda, went right to your intent to appoint. There's no law that requires you to do that. As I used to tell Mr. Clausen, as long as you had 3 votes, you could do anything you want. So there isn't any requirement to do that. But I'm just concerned about the transparency, because what is occurring, what occurred after that law did, is the erosion of citizens to be able to petition their government. And you haven't discussed that, during that period of time. So under the new law, the board can call for a special election or publish the intent to appoint. After the appointment is made, citizens have 14 days to file a petition and can only gather that 4,570 signatures during that 14-day period. So it really restricts the ability to do that. And if no petition is filed, the appointee serves until the next general election. So if there's a special election, that office does not appear on that ballot. It doesn't appear on the ballot until the next general election. So what I'm concerned about is that, and just as far as transparency goes, you folks didn't do it, but I do have an issue with the way it was published on the agenda, is that citizens don't really understand what was going on here. And they didn't know about the law change. It wasn't well publicized. It was rammed through in just 3 days in the legislature to change this. And so that's my concern. And I just wanted to express it at this point.
So at this point, can we discuss whether or not we want to have a special election?
You can at this point, but it's not published. It's not on the agenda. Citizens didn't know about it. They were not made aware that that was something you could consider. That's my point. Thank you.
And didn't we talk about it February 16th? It was like the week after Treasurer Clayton sent his letter. I thought we had all discussed.
You did, but it was not on the agenda.
Okay, I gotcha. Basically,
So-
we did all publicly discuss at that time, though not on the agenda, that we did all favor the process of appointment. So that's where now at this point, I was just thinking we should publish notice that we plan to appoint and follow the timeline that we discussed last week as well. And then, like I say, I don't know, we can either direct somebody to write that, how that would be worded.
I think what I hear Pat saying is we need to next week have an item on the agenda so we can sit here and say, yes, we're going to do an appointment, which makes it public, right, Pat?
Yes, sir.
So,
There's no requirement to that. Just making sure that, just wanted to appear.
well, that basically is a CYA. So, can we still do this date, this timeline, or do we need to move it up a week?
Well, we didn't conspire in a closed setting or
No.
in private. It was discussed in open session. A preference of how to move forward.
Well,
We did receive his resignation letter. That was on the agenda.
Joshua, do you have any input?
Well, I think the action today is properly on the agenda. I mean, it's what the board has previously discussed. I believe there was also input from the public at a subsequent board meeting in regards to the appointment process. So if this motion were to fail today and the board were determined to proceed in another manner, then that would be appropriate to come back with a different agenda item. But ultimately, if this is the way the board wants to go, then it's on the agenda and it's an action that the board can take today.
Well, and if anybody feels otherwise that we should not appoint, you could vote no, and that would show your intention to do an election.
And as part of this discussion, it's fair game to talk about what alternative options are.
Mr. Gill, approximately what would it cost for a special election on this?
I usually estimate around 15 to 20,000.
Well, if if it's transparent,
And, you know, there just is no hurry to do this, just to be fair.
I don't disagree. I guess my thing is if we make the appointment and then this person has to be on the next election, regularly scheduled election, if I'm correct, would be in the
It would
20
serve
22
out the
cycle.
regular term. I believe that I read some sort of publishing that he was just on the ballot last year. That is not true. It is his term would expire at the next general election
In 22?
in 22.
So it'd be roughly a year and a half? Yeah.
And then the appointed person, if they chose to run, they could run at that time and
Right.
and have an
Yes.
opponent or two or.
What that does, and what the intent was, because this was brought about because the auditor is going to retire in Scott County. And they wanted to be able to appoint and put that person up to run as the incumbent. And that's what you do if you appoint and you don't have a special election. What my concern is that they changed the law, and when people could have been gathering signatures during this period of time, now it's relegated to a 14-day period, which is an impossibility, almost an impossibility, to gather 1,400 or 4,570 signatures.
Well, I mean, I agree with that concern. Just so I understand, if the board passes this motion, or if the board does not, the only way currently for the citizens to petition with 4,570 signatures is within 2 weeks of the appointment being done?
Yes, once the appointment is made, then it starts that 14-day period.
So currently, if this was delayed, there'd be The board could have before the law changed, but now if we were to postpone for whatever reason, we couldn't start, we could not allow a greater period of time.
You could not.
Okay.
The only point was, is to consider.
Yeah.
I don't know, I think we should just go ahead and do this. Nobody's gonna get 4,500 signatures in 2 weeks. I mean, you'd have to do a marathon.
I don't want to tell them that they can't try, but
No, well, no. If we do this, they still get that period of time to
Right.
do it.
yeah, I wouldn't want it to look like we're trying to get them to dissuade them from
No,
doing that. So is that your motion, Mr. Monson?
that's my motion.
I'll second.
Motion by Monson, second by Radig. Any other concerns or issues with this?
Do you guys have anybody in mind to take that position?
I've had three, oh, sorry, yeah. We'll let you say it on the microphone. Say your name and where you're from, too.
My name's Mike Head, I'm 304 C Sergeant Bluff. I
Uh,
was wondering, do you guys have anybody that's
I've had
set up for this?
3 different people call me and ask about it.
Yeah, well, I ran last election, and there's only 3 of us that ran. One's passed away, and of course, one's stepping down. I'm very interested in this, that's why I'm here.
So, what we were gonna discuss, if we did move forward, this is having an application or form that is filled out, and then having those all received in the board's office. You know, Karen or Heather would be in the board office to receive those. And then that would get you a chance to come and interview on the agenda by next.
This is an elected job, and none of you guys had to fill out an application process to get your jobs. This is an elected position.
I get that.
I did the
but-
diligence to go out and get signatures already. My devotion's there. I don't think you guys gotta apply for the position.
Well, the idea behind that is, so when we were on city council and somebody wanted to say, join the Yamanashi Sister City Committee, they had to fill out a small application.
Yeah.
It's basically saying, hey, I do get involved in my community. Hey, I do, maybe I didn't pay a bill one time and I had this warrant out for my arrest, but this is all cleared up. Anything like that is out on the table. It's clear. So there's full public disclosure. If somebody wants to take the position of a county treasurer, that's certainly a lot more important than a position like a board member on the Yamanashi Sister City Committee. That's why I felt it was appropriate that we have some kind of form or application to get just general background information. Because let's say like when I left the city council for the Board of Supervisors and they filled my seat over at City Hall, I think they had 17 people that came and interviewed for that position in open session at City Council, and they had to choose one from the 17. We very well could get, 15, 20 people that want to do this position, Mike, and I've only had 3 people willing to call me on it, but.
I know the history of people running for it isn't very good. There
Well-
haven't been too many people that's ever run for it.
In general, the history of people being willing to run for office and do what it takes to run for a political office versus people that want to be appointed to a political office, that list tends to be a lot shorter because you have campaign finance laws to follow, a lot of other rules, and you got to do a lot of work to campaign. Whereas being appointed is typically very little work. So to me, having an application or a form that's filled out to get your information to us and coming before the Board of Supervisors and maybe telling us what either A, you want to do or accomplish by being on the county treasurer, I think that would all be important information for us to have before we go through the process of choosing who we appoint. If that makes sense.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Did you have something, Pat?
Yes, Mr. Headed, another concern I had, I didn't bring it up, but since you asked the question, it isn't the board that did this, but in the resignation letter, the treasurer recommended a person to fill his vacancy, which I thought was inappropriate to do so. And especially if that person wasn't in that office. And so it really precludes the rest of it. It's kind of a strike against anybody who has served in that office to even to consider throwing their hat in the ring when that incumbent doesn't endorse that person.
I'm done.
Okay, I got lost again, Pat. Do we have a motion and a second yet, or where
We
are
have a
we?
motion and a second, and that is to publish, is that correct?
That's what I thought. We're published a notice of intention to appoint the county treasurer. Any other input from the board or the public?
How would one get this application?
I'd be in the board office, and I think, this is.
Well, that's the next item.
But
Okay.
this is just a published notice that we intend to appoint somebody.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0. Item B, approval of interview information form required for appointment to county treasurer.
So then I wrote this up actually using a lot of templates of city committee forms. It's kind of a guide to what should be on there, but also information that I think is pertinent to serving in elected office. Of course, people don't have to fill out every line if they don't want to. It's more of a get to know somebody, maybe have something to ask in an interview process. But I think this is information that is helpful in appointing a public official and also kind of covering a lot of our decision-making in the process. To your question earlier there, Mark, the form I think we could have in the board office for people to pick up.
Or email.
Or online on the website.
Yeah.
I don't have anybody from WCICC here that says that's easy to do, but I'm sure that probably is, right? Okay. So I think those would be the.
These would not be made public.
What would not be? Well, it would be because you would have it on the agenda for the interview the following week. I think that would be important to have this information be public.
Some of that's a little scary to be,
I guess, yeah, if you give your references, phone numbers. But.
Yeah.
But that's,
That's why we.
when I applied for the city committee years ago, I had to put down all this stuff. It's
public?
It was public, yeah.
Public.
Okay.
Everyone, yeah.
Which committee were you on?
Is that legal?
Effective fiscal and public policy.
Oh, yeah, I did vote for you on that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
Joshua, is this appropriate to make this public?
I have had some discussions with Keith about this, and it's important to keep in mind that it's not a traditional hiring process. It's an appointment. And so there's ability to use a different path, and part of that's part of the reason the questionnaires are going to the board office rather than through HR. And so it's really up to the board kind of how they want to set up and design the process. I don't think there's anything on the questionnaire that would fall under a confidential record requirement if it was in a personnel file. It might be helpful to note on the form, I don't remember if we did or not, that it will be a public record, just so that people are on notice of that.
That needs to be on there very clearly.
So we would amend to say at the top, notice all information will be available to the public, or is that how you would say it?
Yeah, just, it's a public record under
Iowa Code.
Iowa Code.
Is that a motion?
No. Do we have anybody on the phone? Do we have anybody on the phone that would like to address this topic? Apparently not.
Have anybody on the phone at all?
Anyone on the phone who would not like to address this topic?
Item B, action item.
Move it.
With the amended,
With the amendment, yeah.
disclosure that it's public information.
Yes.
Motion by Monson,
I'll second it.
second by Raddick. Any further discussion?
I appreciate the last question. I understand the role and responsibilities that I'm willing to serve. If anyone marks no, I don't know why we would interview them.
Well, I think that does put a damper on the prospects if that's a no.
Yeah, that's,
Well, we might get some honesty, but
well, maybe the current treasurer would have marked no if he was asked today.
Second by Raddick. Any further discussion? I appreciate the last question. I understand the role.
The YouTube delay there, that's great.
Marks, no. I don't know why we would interview them. Yeah, that's, oh, we might get some honesty, but, well, maybe the current treasurer would have marked no.
Who's it?
all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Passes 5-0.
Is there a way to mute that?
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, there we go.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, William Burroughs, District 1, Woodbury County. I would like to comment on 14A and B, just to say that the county already has a employment application, along with a job description for the county treasurer. So I would encourage the board to look at both of those documents rather than try to come up with something that's homemade. I think you already have the documents you need. You just need to have people fill them out. And then I wondered about the process of the public notice. As far as I know, there's 3 newspapers in the county. The Recorder in Mobile, the Advocate in Sergeant Bluff, and of course the Journal. So I would want to make sure that public notices are in those papers at a minimum for 2 consecutive weeks. I'm with Mr. Jennings when he talks about the farm. I think this whole process could be slowed down just to make sure it's being done right. I also have a comment on another agenda item. Should I do that now or wait till? Wait.
Well, actually, Mr. Burrows, I did ask twice if there was a caller on the line, and we already voted on item 14A and B, so.
No, I know. I was on the line, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I was on the line, and at some point, there was a technical difficulty. Got cut off. I had to call back. You can verify that with Karen James. You probably wrote down what time I called in first time. So I've been on the phone for a long time.
Okay. We are going to probably put something in the Danbury paper too, Karen? Yes?
Excellent.
So.
Isn't the Danbury one of the official papers that would,
okay.
It's not? Oh.
Should be.
But regardless, what is your other comment, Mr. Burrows?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to back up just for a second on item 13A. At yesterday's city council meeting, there was discussion about having to put in some kind of a water pump or something to get water up to the jail. And I wondered if somebody from the county there can explain that from your point of view. Also, the fellow that spoke right after Kenny, he didn't identify himself. Who is that fellow?
I'm going to go with Shane Albrecht.
And his position is what, Mr. Chairman?
He's with the Baker Group, one of our guidance people on this project.
Project manager.
Okay. Thank you. So is there any input on that, that pump that the city's got to put in?
Is that pumping for water or waste? Well, what is that?
Yeah, you can't have jail without any water.
Sure.
Shane, would you like to take this one?
So currently, this is Shane Albrecht with the Baker Group. I'm the owner's rep for the Woodbury County Authority. The reason we're required to pump is current city water pressure at the site is only 40 PSI. We need, for domestic, we need 92 PSI, and we need 95 PSI for the fire suppression system. So both of those require a pump because of the water pressure that's at the site.
But this is more of a city infrastructure project on the water pump, right? So this would help for any other development in that area, is that correct?
Yeah, yes, but I'm just talking about what's at our site. We had to put a pump for each of
The
those.
requirements of the 95
Yes.
PSI, yeah.
Yes.
But in general, from the city's point of view, they're benefiting because this will actually spur other development in this area by having suitable water.
So I'm missing something here. The pumps we are putting in will only serve our building, will not repressurize the city's water pump system.
Okay, so
It's
these are
only
the
because these are going to be the county's pumps to maintain forever. This takes the city water pressure and boosts it for the facility so that it has adequate water pressure to be able to serve.
So it's just a capital project just for this?
Yes.
Okay.
So, Mr. Albright, will there be additional expenses for the county because of this then?
Is there?
Who's paying for it?
So the county,
The authority.
the authority is paying for the pumps.
It would be absorbed out of the bond issue funding
Yes.
that's coming through.
Yes. And the city offered to contribute, I think, $375,000.
That would go towards the purchase price of the land and the project in and of itself of the street. And that would basically the $375,000 would come out of the price of the land, but it would not change the price of the land and the improvements to the street and so forth. So the city is basically going to absorb that $375,000, but we would still need some of those booster pumps as such to maintain the flow up there that we're going to need. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
Are you, any other issues?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Item 14C, Mr. Radig, unnamed lake project near Correctionville and Little Sioux Park.
I thought I had gotten this in the backup material, but I didn't get that. But there's two sheets there. This is kind of a creative solution for part of our gravel project. Our existing gravel project, Mark is not here, but.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, he is? Okay. Back there? Okay. It was initially discussed that a lot of the gravel would be coming from this area and excavated and crushed into gravel as part of that $10 million. Putting the gravel out and everything, that would be out of his annual budget. And initially, Mark, on the discussion, did he say it was around 2 or 3 million that was intended to excavate and the rest was for crushing?
That was the rough estimate of how the expenses in that 10 million were going to break out. We were looking somewhere between 1.5 and 2 million tons. We're seeing our buying power decline in the 18 months since we first proposed this project. But, we also cut down from 960 miles to specifying 750 miles that we would be doing out of our entire gravel road system. So At 1.5 million, we would still have enough to get the base, or 1.5 million tons, we'd still have enough to get the base that we're looking for. But yeah, roughly 3 million of the 10 is probably just to excavate, get the material up on top, and then the balance would be to process it. In processing it, it's run through a sieve and a crusher so that we get some broken edges, and then we get some more coarse fraction in that gravel. It also sorts out excess sand from the material as well. But yeah, that's all proposed to be part of our project at this point in time.
Thank you. You got the trouble.
So in the process of, you were going to create some kind of small lake out of the excavation process anyway, correct?
Well, that was the intention. We have a number of small bodies of water on a 120-acre parcel that the county's owned since the 1940s. And our thought and goal in working with conservation when the land was acquired was that from the south part of what had been the 1940s era gravel pit in Little Sioux Park, or near Little Sioux Park, that we would have that all the way up to the Brazy pit as a single lake so that it could be utilized as a very nice fishing facility for the county park system.
So doing this as a standalone project and it becomes a lake project, we have the ability to apply for like a CAT grant, or a community attraction tourism grant, maybe something from the DNR, maybe something from EPA, as like discussions with somebody else earlier about how some of these federal organizations are getting so much money, they're going to need projects to fund. And if we could get some other outside funding to do what we were essentially planning to do anyway, and excavate this gravel, I think it's kind of a creative way to do something we were planning to already do, and reduce maybe that burden on the TIF fund that we could just use that towards crushing that gravel that's excavated here in the future. Another part of that project is some of the ground that's owned by the county on the north end of what would be the lake that kind of looks like a blue jay weeble. I don't think that would be a good name for the lake, but that northern portion up here, and even onto that private farmer's property, could be developed. You have something around 4,400 feet of lakefront that could be developed. And when you divide that by, say, a 50-foot wide lot, or a 60-foot wide lot, or 70-foot wide lot, all of a sudden now you have at least 35 properties that are on there now paying taxes that weren't there before. We could utilize partnering with Correctionville to bring water and sewer out to that area. And if you can get it to there, maybe get it all the way to Little Sioux Park, providing, you know, a nice water source and sewer for that area as well. I just think that this is kind of an out-of-the-box idea to get some development, expand the city, do something we are already planning to do. And I think it could be quite transformative for Northwest Woodbury or Northeast Woodbury County. And I think it will benefit the park a lot in the future as well, because this would create an opportunity for some expansion of the campgrounds down just south of the lake, maybe make cabins more of a in-demand thing to use for the future there. Because somebody who might not be able to buy a, you know, $450,000 lake house on the north end of the property might see the $250 or whatever cabin rental over the weekend as a good buy and a reason to go visit there as well. So that's the idea behind all this, and anybody that wants to grill me on any questions, just...
Well, what was the time frame, Mark, that we're going to have this? Seems to me like we were talking 10 years or so before this would be...
Oh, far more than that.
Well, okay, a minimum then.
We have reserves that we've estimated between 30 and 50 years out there on this 120-acre parcel. We were starting at the Brazy property and going to work our way south.
Okay, then...
And, you know, our goal in doing that was we put our processing facility down near that south end to give us a place where we could stockpile and utilize the material. Waste and spoil would be gotten rid of over the years to create jetties and more shoreline is what we had envisioned, using the waste material that wasn't useful for gravel production. And then the overburden, which is what we call the soil that's on top of the gravel, using those to enhance the habitat down there, create picnic areas and that type of thing. That was the concept we looked at when we were originally buying and looking at this property, is that from the north end of the original Bracy pit all the way south through that property, we'd end up with that being an extension, a little Sioux Park with campgrounds, campsites, perhaps cabins, picnic areas and such, as we work down there.
Like,
We have the trail on the riverside, and we'd look at more vehicular access coming into that.
I think I was on the board when we bought this.
We were, or you were, yes.
And I think the intent was it would be conservation.
That's what we had talked about, including the 40 acres that has no gravel reserve under it. That portion we're currently renting as farm has no gravel underneath of it. It's outside the historic channels where that material was deposited. There had been discussion about eventually partitioning that portion off and selling it, or perhaps conservation would acquire it from the county road department and then utilize it for an upland prairie area, something of that nature, public hunting area. We had started work on an agreement between conservation and secondary roads for board and conservation board consideration and approval. We kind of got hit by some 2018 flooding, and it was one of those where it's hard to drain the swamp when you're up to your waist in alligators. So we never got that agreement finished with conservation. It wouldn't take a lot to dust it off and get something done. But I mean, there's a lot of options out there with what we do with that acreage. Right now, it's a nice asset. It's helping us recuperate some of the cost of the original acquisition of the property. I think to date we've collected the neighborhood of $45,000 in rent, and over the next couple of years there will be another $45,000 on top of that. We're currently 2 years, I think, from having that paid off with the county board. The board loaned us the $575,000 to purchase the property. We've currently paid off $357,000. So we have a payment this year, and I believe next year, right?
We being secondary roads?
Secondary roads repaying I think, did we borrow that from General Basic?
We have a budgeted revenue coming in this year and next year.
And you know, then it's fully paid off, and at which point we'd be looking at, that's another of the reasons we weren't in a huge hurry on the conservation property, is because secondary roads still owed the Board of Supervisors that money, and we need to determine what that land use might be. Keith knows more about those grants than I do. I had never heard of that community and tourism. It's kind of outside my
Oh, that's a big deal.
But I think if we could get $1 million there, or $500,000 there, and something from EDA, and I just think it's a smart way to move forward, and then you get some development in this area, and you know, if you had 35 lots developed in that area.
Well, what is your time frame? I guess with this many years to get this excavated, what is your thinking on time frame?
Probably within 3 years, I think.
The area that he's looking at there is the first area we'll be drawing all the reserves out of. As I said, we're starting at the north end and pulling through to the south. It's hard to say exactly how far into that next portion of that Little Sioux property the county owns will have to go to get that full 2 million tons of, well, 1.5 to 2 million tons up on the road. We're going to buy as much as we can afford to stockpile, including doing our annual gravel purchase out of our regular budget while we have that crew in to process it.
Okay.
And you know, from there south, none of us are going to see the end of that project. Probably even Matthew would be lucky to see us fully have that lake finished. Picking on him as being the youngest here. You know, if it is as, we went out and we did test holes in that entire 120-acre property, I think before we bought the Bracy farm. And, you know, we found gravel reserves between 3 and 10 feet down, 3 and 10 feet of overburden, and then as deep as we could dig, we were still hitting some very good gravel.
Okay.
Just about everywhere we cut a hole.
Well, as this is an information item, do we want to keep this going?
Well, I think it would be worthwhile to keep going, just because.
I mean, on this evening's meeting.
Well, on this meeting, that's, you know, I just want to make sure any questions that are out there I can maybe answer. And I have talked with IEDA, and they thought it was really a creative idea. They had the thinking that having more lakes and waterways to be used in Iowa is a good thing because each one is a lot of economic development. They say any parks or campgrounds nearby a larger lake that has some development ends up thriving, and I think those are all good goals for Woodbury County to have as a Board of Supervisors. And creating some development out there, I think, is another major goal. I think if we're going to be you know, creative and forward-thinking on a lot of this, and this could maybe, like I say, we're going to excavate this gravel anyway, give us an alternate funding source to do that and do it quicker than maybe 20 or 30 years out and having, you know, piles ready to go just to be crushed or sorted into what you need it to be.
April 5th, we're doing a much smaller project. Last year, the board, or the county road department requested bids for stockpiling gravel at our railroad pit. The price we were quoted came in higher than buying it from the right pit. And that was on land that we own. We thought that was extremely high. The railroad pit has some areas where we have some blow sand seams and material that isn't suitable for use. That led, at Ben's suggestion, us to look at going out there and actually hiring an earth moving contractor to come in and stockpile that 60,000 tons of material to be processed by somebody who comes in, sees what he's got, and doesn't have to do all that excavation. With what we looked at and talking to a couple of contractors, we could save up to $1 a ton. That isn't huge on railroad, but when you expand it to a $1.5 million project, there's a potential for some pretty good savings out there if we use that model of going out, excavating, bringing the material up to be processed, and then just having the processor come in and do that work without having to do the excavation as well.
Right. Well, any other questions for Mr. Radig?
I think this is a great idea, but it's 10 years too soon. And I think if we want to keep this going, it should involve these two gentlemen, conservation and secondary roads and whatever that's going to be out there. Because personally, I go back and I distinctly remember this was purchased with the intent that it would move to conservation to improve the park. So,
Dan Heisel, Director of the Woodbury County Conservation Board. I'd just like to point out that my board and myself have not been involved in this process other than a 10-minute phone call from Mr. Radig, and 3 hours later I have the map that's in front of you sent to me. Kind of disheartened by that because he had me up until the housing development, and I was honest with you on that. My board feels the same way. We have worked with Mark Nera. Where'd he go? Mark Nera. My predecessor, Rick Schneider, had worked with Mark Nera. My board has long-range planning sessions, and one of those planning sessions, this has come up over and over and over, the expansion of Little Sioux Park. Where you put the campground in the bottom, too swampy. You haven't been on the property apparently.
Well,
where you're putting the housing, there's some issues. But There's a lot of things that have to go through to get to that process. What I'm trying to say is, we had envisioned when we worked with the secondary roads and the supervisors in 2018 on buying the Breezy Farm. Because we bought the property across the road and used grant dollars to pay for it in the process of doing that. The agreement with the secondary roads and the supervisors at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, is when you were done graveling and got as far as you went, the County Conservation Board would have right of first refusal to buy that, what was left from you to the west.
That's correct.
And we were going to use that as green space to develop more of the park. And up north, you talk about $74,000 in revenue after the 55% rollback. I'm talking $200,000 to $250,000 a year immediately once we develop that park, with campgrounds, cabins, enclosed shelter that can be rented for weddings, graduations. None of that was asked of us. I love it that you want to build a lake, and out-of-the-box thinking. But we have plans too, and we have a board that you appoint and professional staff that do this. We'd like to be involved. I sat here and listened to you two talking about everything conservation was going to do. Nobody asked me or my board. Don't want to throw water on this, but it's a great project. But we had other plans for developing up there in north, and I guess you have final say. But I just hope that you work with us, and I'd love to help you get a lake. And there are grants out there for that. It's part of why they hired me.
Sure.
So, just need to make that known that we've talked about it as a conservation board. My last meeting, I sent an email to Mark with my concerns, as he is our liaison. And I just like my conservation board involved from here on out, and myself, and because it would be good for the county. The recreation that we could provide and the number of people that come into town. Every camper that comes into that park spends $59 a day in the economy. That's not in our rental fees. That's gas, food, going to the grocery store. I provide those figures for you during budget period. A park this size and an expansion this size with full service, the revenues they'd pay for the project shortly. So I'd like to work with you on this and move forward. I'm not thrilled about the housing development because it ruins conservation and what we want to do. Like I said, but you'll have final say.
Okay.
Questions of me? Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments on this item C?
So one intention on excavating some of that other material was to make the part of the park less swampy as well. So that was.
Well, when all of those old gravel pits were developed, the work was basically done just by pushing that material up with a dozer. They didn't have the excavation equipment that we have today to do that type of work. They didn't have the pumps that could drain those areas down. And, you know, when we concepted this, I agree the lake's the highest and best use. What's around that lake is what the discussion and decision is about. And when I think were you out there auction day even, Mark? You know, we were looking at, when we got done, that we were going to try and develop the resource as we went, so that, you know, we have some preliminary plans laid out in our office on how that recreational ground, picnic areas, those kind of things were going to be laid out. It's one of the things that we're encouraged to do now as we develop gravel pits, quarries, whatever, is that recovery of the land and that future land use with it, and try and leave a useful footprint when we dig that big hole in the ground.
I spent a lifetime out there with a neighbor walking around being told that you were making poor gravel. Remember that?
We've all heard about, many stories about that, including the one out on Allison Avenue that day. Weren't you? You were on that one as well, I think, with Dick Storm. And everybody has a little different idea.
Yep.
You know, we are looking at a different gravel gradation that's going to put more material in that coarse fraction for us with what we're going to be producing for this gravel road project.
I'm starting to think that we're getting way off topic here, and I'd like to keep this brief as possible because it is an information item, so.
I guess I just want to count, you brought up it towards the end of your time, what we were talking about on reclamation, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you do it with conservation in mind, your reclamation costs are lower with your footprint, because you don't have to do total reclamation if we're involved. It's the way it used to be.
Well, you know, we're basically wanting to leave the ground in a place where you guys can develop your facilities. So as we widen and expand and combine all of those lakes, all that material we can't use as gravel has got to go somewhere,
So you need
which would be on the banks.
Where the
Right.
jetties are. And
Yeah.
So.
That's the long-term thought with it that we had when we first laid this out. And then they would develop their picnic areas, campground. We're not involved with that, but we're gonna try and leave them a footprint. And a nice fishery is what we had tried. And whether we use part of that, where the board decides to use part of that as Keith is proposing, or whether we go with the original plan and it's all public ground, it's still gonna be a very nice facility for the county. We don't have a lot of lakes in this part of the state. I grew up in eastern Iowa, did a lot of lake fishing over the years. You just don't see that here.
Okay. Any brief final thoughts, Mr. Reddick?
Nope.
Anybody else? Item 14D, CIP prioritization for COVID-19 local government relief funds.
Well, I think that it would be maybe wise to set up a small committee or designate some way to identify which CIP projects might qualify for these COVID-19 relief funds. Obviously, the number one priority, I think, would be our jail project, if we are, in fact, allowed to use those funds. The information in the federal law is very vague. I will email you that part if you guys all want to read it for yourselves. The only thing that really identifies were water, sewer, and broadband improvement as a priority for governments to spend. Everything else was maybe setting up charitable funds or bailing out nonprofits or something to those extents, as well as covering lost revenue for the county, which this is where I'm hoping the jail would qualify. We're not necessarily losing revenue, but we're losing buying power with cost increases. So I think it would be just wise for us to maybe identify a few people to work together and advise the board on how to prioritize this impending potential $20 million windfall that can't be used to offset our tax revenues. Any questions or discussion on that?
Yeah, I'm kind of liking the committee we have,
Which is just us?
the board.
Yeah.
So,
You know what, I'd like to see some division of this in terms of the whole 10 million can't go to the jail necessarily, but there should be some, and maybe we should be getting some input from various department heads. And
I'm sure we'll have no problem getting input on how to spend money.
well, I don't think so either.
well,
But
we've already gotten some input that wasn't even asked for so far, and we won't have any problem, like Mr. Young says.
I'd like to see it in writing.
Well, this is not to hold you off, Mr. Heisel, but I think that we're still, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Butler, but we're still trying to decipher, for the majority, we've got it figured out that we can use this money for certain projects and so forth, but there might be a little fine tuning. Yeah, so.
Instead of verbal, phone call, things like that, and that's what they're trying to do now, is through their accounting, know, with NACO going through the process there, getting all the requests from different people, but we see what different ideas or questions are and how they're answered. And this isn't something that'll happen overnight, but it has to happen soon, because we'll get the first 10 million pretty soon. And the jail is a critical issue because we have no other options of revenue, or very few, to fund the balance. I may not take the whole million, probably won't. Hopefully only take 7 or 8 million, then we're already donating 2 million. So there will be some funds there that the board's gonna have to determine where they go.
Have you been told the date, Dennis, or just the general ballpark of when we'll get the first half?
I called them today for a date when we actually get the money, but we know it's within 60 days of enactment, so it should be here by May. And that gives us the advantage of, once we have the money, then we get some guidelines, so the project for the jail can be bid out, in 7, 8 weeks instead of 7, 8 months.
Mr. Heisel?
Keith, you mentioned, and they got my wheels turning, on labor, it can't be used for labor, but materials, on projects and construction projects, and lost revenues. Well, we lost a lot of revenue this last year due to COVID, and then we had to put off our construction project that we want to bond with you guys. I've talked to Dennis and mentioned to you guys. That's an idea for materials, because the material costs are still up there, and I don't foresee them coming down anytime soon, and we get that project completed. So it is just for materials, correct?
No, it was saying for lost revenue, so I don't know if that would include like our juvenile detention and jail as well, that lost revenues technically. But the problem is the language is not clear really at all. So I think we obviously need to hurry up and wait and get the information at Department of Treasury that see how they define it under their rules and guidelines.
I'd be curious on how that comes back, because we tracked our lost revenue, and that would be nice, but would be nice is to help with the construction that we've had to put off due to COVID and costs, that we might, with your blessings, have a chance at some of that to help offset, so then we're not bonding as much that we have to come to you for. So that's all I have.
Yeah. So is there any more input on the information item of putting together some committees for this, for a future?
And I'm fine if we leave it as the Board of Supervisors as the committee. I'm fine with that. It's just, I think it's just good for us to, identify, I had, Kenny kind of bring me the spreadsheet of costs for the courthouse itself, which I think might have a hard time getting funding any other way, because it's technically all this, the tuck pointing of this building is shovel ready. Yep. It's just a matter of bidding it out and doing it. We've got it in the plan, just not how you pay for it in the plan. So this could be something identified and taken care of with this funding if it's allowed.
Kenny, do you have a 5-year plan?
Kenny Schmitz, Building Services Director. We did have a 5-year plan, and as circumstances often dictate, such as the LEC and other things, there are items that, got put to the wayside, and the courthouse was definitely one of those. So that was in the 5-year plan. It hasn't been touched. We haven't had the funds to even get anywhere near close to doing any part of it. So yes, that was in the 5-year plan and turned into a known year plan.
Well, yeah, we call it the lifetime plan now.
Yes.
So any other input on the item D?
Based on having this conversation, I think somebody should put out, if you have needs, put them in writing.
Mm-hmm.
Don't call.
Right. Well, like I said, we're already seeing some of those.
Yeah.
Some of those come in. Item 15, reports on committee meetings. I sit on the Rolling Hills Governance Board, and the Crisis Center on Division Street is I guess officially for sale by the current Sioux Rivers Governance Board. We have been playing a game of we'll offer you this and we won't take less than that, and it's been situation normal with our former friends to the north. So I will be in a meeting tomorrow with the Rolling Hills Governance Board, and there will be more to follow on that. Anyone else? Citizen concerns on the second round. Anybody have citizen concerns that they'd briefly like to address? Hearing none, board concerns.
So I had spoken with the mayor and Dan Moore both about potentially the county and the city and maybe possibly Simcoe engaging our state legislators to encourage the state to create funds with their COVID money, relief money, to maybe benefit our area in the future. One of those things that is pretty major is the viaduct and the Bacon Creek Channel repairs. If Sioux City taxpayers are left bearing the burden of those costs, it impacts our county gratefully. So I think it would be great to work together with them to identify those, as well as maybe identifying funds put aside for demolition projects, because we may have a very big demolition project 2 years out. All these things would be spent by 2024, December 31st of 2024. So I think that it would be good for us to work with the city and Simcoe and our state legislature to, at least our local contingent, to have that sit down and maybe let them know our desires or needs for funds in the future.
I agree with that. The Bacon Creek thing is really bad.
Yes, it is.
And pricey.
They're talking about 100 million, I think, on the viaduct, and something like 75 million or 80 million on the channel. So 175 million out of local tax dollars sounds pretty brutal to me. So that,
Well, that's what the $3 trillion infrastructure bill's for.
that's right. Are they just making up numbers at this point?
Printed money. Any other board concerns? Sir?
We were just talking about creating a committee to name this lake.
We are adjourned. We are out of here.
Yeah.